Okay, so today we are going to be looking at factoring trinomials. So last class we were looking at factoring four-term polynomials. Now we're looking at what happens when there's only three terms, and what do we need to do. And pretty much what you're going to see is that we are going to take the trinomial and make it into four terms. And then go from there, just how we were doing it last class. So factoring trinomials of the form ax squared plus bx plus c can be factored using the same process as factoring by grouping or with factoring by box method. So how to factor trinomials of the form ax squared plus bx plus c. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this a, so the coefficient of our first term, times our constant, and we're going to list all the pairs of factors, right? So you got that list after your quiz. You should have picked this up, and I gave you the factor pair list from numbers 1 through 100. So for example, if we look at the number 12, a factor pair would be 1 times 12, or 2 times 6, or 3 times 4. And then we can also look at the negative versions as well, but we're just going to focus on the positive right now. So we're going to list those factors, and then we're going to determine which of those factors are going to add to this b term. Okay, so if I'm looking at 12 and I want to see which of those factored pairs add to 7, 3 times 4 is 12, 3 plus 4 is 7, okay? We're going to split that middle term into those two factors that add to b. So instead of 7x, we'll have 3x plus 4x. And then you can go in, we have four terms now, and we're either going to factor by grouping or factor by box method. Okay, so let's see what this looks like. So number one, we have 2x squared plus 13x plus 6. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to multiply a times c. So a is that coefficient of your first term, and c is your constant. So 2 times 6 is 12, right? And now we're going to list all of those factored pairs. So we have 1 times 12, 2 times 6, and 3 times 4. That's everything that will multiply to give me 12. And we want to know which of these is going to add to b. And b is 13. So we're going to check. 1 plus 12, that's 13. So we know that's it, but I'm just going to go through the rest of them. 2 plus 6, that's 8. 3 plus 4 is 7. So I'm going to use this 1 and 12. So what happens to this is I'm going to split this middle term up into 1x plus 12x, right? Because 1x plus 12x is still 13x. I'm not changing my equation at all. And then I'm going to keep everything else the same. And now we know how to do this, right? You can either split that equation in half, and we can factor by grouping, right? So when I factor by grouping, I'm looking at this. What is the GCF of 2x squared plus 1x? I can take out an x. 2x squared divided by x will leave me with 2x. X divided by x will leave me with 1. And then over here, 12x plus 6, I have a GCF of 6. 12x divided by 6 is 2x. 6 divided by 6 is 1. So then I can take out that same binomial that I have right here, because those are the same. And then I can take out my two GCFs. So then factored, this is 2x plus 1 times x plus 6. And to check, I can distribute this back out, right? And I should end up getting right back where I started. So I know that this is my answer of this trinomial factored out. And then we could also do box method with it, right? So once I split up my equation into 2x squared plus 12x plus 1x plus 6, again, first term goes in the top left, last term goes in the bottom right, and then I'll fill in my other two terms. I pick anywhere to start, so I'm going to take the GCF of this column right here. So 2x squared and x, my GCF is x. X times what gives me 2x squared? That's going to be 2x. 2x times what gives me 12x? That's going to be 6. 6 times what gives me 6? That's going to be 1. So again, I get that 2x plus 1 times x plus 6. Remember, use the method that makes most sense to you. If you like grouping, stick with grouping. You like box method, stick with box method. Whatever you would like to do. Okay? Let's do the next one together. So we have x squared plus 17x plus 72. Okay? So first, I need to determine what my A and my C are. When there's nothing there, I have an invisible 1. So my A is 1. My C is 72. So I'm looking at the multiples of 72. So you can look at your list, but eventually you're going to have to get to the point where you can do these on your own. Okay? You're not going to have this list on your quiz. So 72. To multiply to 72, I can do 1 times 72. I can do 2 times 36. 4 times 18. 6 times 12. And then 8 times 9. Those are my multiples of 72. Those are my factor pairs. And then I'm looking for which one adds to 17. So 1 plus 72, that's 73. 2 plus 36 is 38. 4 plus 18 is 22. 6 plus 12 is 18. 8 plus 9 is 17. So this is what I'm going to use. So I'm splitting up my 17x into 8x plus 9x. And my other two terms stay the same. I'm going to start off with box method since I did grouping first last time. So I'm going to make my box. Okay, first term goes in the top left, last term goes in the bottom right. My other two terms get filled in from there. Okay, so I'm going to look here. The GCF of x squared and 9x is x. X times what gives me x squared? That will be x. X times what gives me 8x? That'll be 8. X times what gives me 9x? That's 9. So 9 times 8 is 72. That works. So that's it factored. Okay? Or you can do group method or grouping. So I'm going to split it in half, get my two binomials, take the GCF of the first binomial. So x squared and 8x, the GCF is x. I'm left with x plus 8. My GCF of 9x and 72 is going to be 9, and I'm left with x plus 8. So then I get x plus 9 times x plus 8. So let's go ahead and look at this next one together, because we have this negative going on in the middle. So when you have a negative, really anywhere in your problem, we're going to have to factor in those negative factor pairs as well. So I'm going to start with a times c, right? So a times c is 2 times 5, which is 10. And I need it to add to a negative 7. Okay, so I want it to multiply to a positive 10, but add to a negative 7. So what that tells me is, because I'm wanting it to multiply to a positive, but it's going to combine to add together to a negative, that tells me that both of my terms are negative, right? Because a negative times a negative makes a positive. So I'm not only going to have to consider 1 times 10, but I'm also going to have to consider negative 1 times negative 10. And I'm not just going to consider 2 times 5, but I also have to think about negative 2 times negative 5, because all of these equal that positive 10. I want it to combine to a negative 7. So 1 plus 10, that's 11. Negative 1 minus 10, that's negative 11. 2 plus 5, that's positive 7. Negative 2 minus 5 equals that negative 7 that I want. So this negative 7x is going to split up into negative 2x minus 5x plus 5. So go on from here. Go ahead and factor by grouping or box method, and check your answer with the key on bright space. All right, so I wanted to do one more example with you guys, and then I'm going to have you practice with the rest of them and checking with the key on bright space. I want to look at, what if what we are multiplying to is negative? So like in this example right here, n squared plus 2n minus 48. So my a times c is 1 times a negative 48, right? So that's negative 48, of course. And I'm seeing, I know to get a negative number with multiplying, one has to be positive and one has to be negative, right? And then I want it to add to a positive 2. So if I'm multiplying a positive and a negative, and it's adding to a positive number, I know that my bigger number needs to be positive. If my b was negative, then my bigger number would need to be negative. So let's just go through and see what this looks like. So my factor pairs for 48 would be 1, negative 1 times 48, or 1 times negative 48, or negative 2 times 24, and 2 times negative 24. I have negative 4 times 12, and 4 times negative 12. I'm going to continue up here. I have negative 6 times 8, and 6 times a negative 8. So then I got to go through and I'm looking for what adds to b, right? Adds to 2. So negative 1 plus 48, that's 47. This would be negative 47. 24 minus 2 would be 22, or negative 22. 12 minus 4, that would be 8. 4 minus 12 would be negative 8. Negative 6 plus 8, that gives me that positive 2 that I'm looking for. So what happens is, again, this 2n gets split up into negative 6n plus 8n, and then everything else stays the same. So go through, finish this one, and try a couple more of them. Check with the key on bright space, and your homework is to do all of the problems.